Let's take a look at Leviticus 1:1. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he is to offer a male without defect. He must present it at the entrance of the tent of meeting so that it may be acceptable to the Lord." And if you remember when we looked at the Nazirite vow, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bring these to the entrance at the tent of meeting, which was part of the Nazirite vow that these Jews in the New Testament who were associated with James and the elders, that Paul was being asked to provide the sacrifices for them, that they would have been doing this. Why? Because this is what God said. The very same voice that said, "Let the land produce vegetation, let there be seed-bearing plants of every kind." Look around you, it's still here. That same voice, that same word spoken said, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any one of them brings an offering to the Lord, it may be acceptable to the Lord." That's the same word that made all the vegetation. Not a different word. When we go through Torah, the instruction of God to us, as we're going through Torah, what we find is we find God speaking. It wasn't Moses sitting down and trying to come up with some kind of creative literary exercise for himself. Oh, let's do some creative writing today. Okay, let's create some sacrifices here. No, this was God speaking and the word going out, and it was creating. It was creating. We think of creating in the sense of creation. We can see from the creation how that word goes out and creates. Just think how powerful that word that created all of the vegetation, the word that created light, the word that separated the expanse, the water up and the water down, and how powerful that word is when it's being spoken. And here it's being spoken and it's saying to the people of Israel, this is how you're supposed to bring your offerings to me. It's the same word being spoken. Man cannot live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. These words were proceeding from the mouth of God every bit as much as the words that we read in creation, that we still see the results to this very day, the power of the word of creation, that right now, today, we're sitting here and we can touch the earth, we can look at the sky, we can get out our telescopes at night, we can look at the starry hosts, and the book of the law begins with God speaking all of creation into existence, and the rest of the book of the law was about God continuing to speak. And how, as God continues to speak, that word continues to go out. And what does the word do? It creates. It creates. You say, well, what's being created here, Prescott?
Unknowingly, I had opened a door here by making the statement that not only were the words spoken at creation creative, but that every word of Torah is creative. One might want to suggest that when God is giving laws or statements, such as those regarding sacrifices, that these are not creative in nature. However, if one pauses a moment and considers each statement, the reasonable conclusion, I believe, is that it is creative. Let's take the statement, "Do not commit murder." This is a clearly understood command, but wherein lies the creativity I speak of? To help you see this, we must look to the account of creation. The words used to describe the earth in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 are formless and empty. The Hebrew for formless is tohu, from an unused root meaning to lie waste, a desolation of surface, such as a desert. Figuratively, a worthless thing, Adverbially, in vain, confusion, empty place, without form, nothing, a thing of naught, vain, vanity, waste, wilderness. The Hebrew for empty is bohu. There must be a word play in there somewhere in the Hebrew between tohu and bohu. But anyway, bohu, from an unused root meaning to be empty, a vacuity. For example, superficially, an undistinguishable ruin, emptiness, void. So, what did earth look like before God began speaking? Chaos, an undistinguishable mess. But with each "and God said" came universal order, structure, system, function, and beauty. Similarly, the commands to not commit murder, to not commit idolatry, to not steal, transforms human social chaos into orderly ways of interacting with each other so that fear and hate can be replaced with trust and compassion. Commands regarding temple worship take us out of the chaos of each one worshiping a god of their own imagination, or worshiping God in a way of their own choosing, as it appears Cain did, to a system of worship that not only pleased God, but spiritually elevated the worshiper. If this explanation does not suffice, it isn't because I'm incorrect in my statement that all that God spoke was creative. It is only that I did a poor job of explaining it.
You need to understand that the word of God that we need to live is found in Torah. The word of God that we read when it says, "and God said," why do you think that when God said, "let there be light," that came to an end at the time of JC? Why do you think that came to an end by reading the Apostle Paul? Nobody thinks that creation has come to an end. Nobody. Nobody believes that the trees are no longer here and that this is just some kind of imagination that we're all collectively experiencing here, like we're caught in the Matrix or something. I don't know anybody who doesn't believe that the creation that was spoken of, a religious person, I don't know any religious person who believes that the creation that was spoken into existence in the beginning of the Torah. You know, the Torah does not begin in Exodus. The Torah doesn't begin in Leviticus or Numbers and Deuteronomy. The Torah begins in Genesis with the beginning of creation. That's the beginning of Torah. The beginning of God speaking and creating. The Torah is God continuing to speak to us so that we can live. Do these and live. Wasn't that the promise? You know, from the beginning, it's all about us being able to live. The reason why he gave us light was because he wanted us to be able to live. Without light, we would die. He gave us creation. He gave us the trees. He gave us the seed-bearing plants so we could live. Everything was designed so that we could live. And he continues to instruct throughout the Torah so that we can live. Anybody who believes that the Torah has come to an end because they read something in the New Testament hasn't walked out their backyard and bumped into a tree yet. They'd have to believe that that tree is a figment of their imagination because it can't be really there because the Torah's no more. If the tree's still there, it's because the word that spoke it into existence is still creating. The tree there is still responding to the divine command. And that divine command continued at the beginning of Genesis, where it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then we read about the account about how he went about doing it. And he went about doing it by speaking and creating.